What's up, guys? Welcome to my first ever video. So today I will be continuing from where I have left off in Mark of Athena. So this is the third book in the Heroes of Olympus series. I do not know what chapter it is. It will be in the title. But so basically I wanted to start reading to you guys because I know some people are not great at reading or don't have the patience to read or like being read to, but don't have time for someone to read to them. And so I'm going to be reading to you, and once I finish this book, I will be doing like 4 books at once. So I will alternate like chapter 1 of this book, chapter 1 of this book, chapter 1 of this book. And so this is chapter, you will know, I do not currently. But like next, I will be reading House of Hades for myself because it's the first time I've read this series. And I will also be reading the first book. I think it's just Heroes of Olympus. I don't know. But I will also be reading like Trials of Apollo, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the whole series of Heroes of Olympus. I could do Harry Potter, I could do the Penderwicks, I could do whatever you want. Just comment down below. I will get it from a library if I do not already have it. You could do American Girl if you want. I don't care. I love reading. I mean, I'm not great at reading out loud. I do not. Sometimes I mumble, but let's just get on with the reading. Okay, so today is chapter something, and it is a Percy chapter. Percy had fought many battles. He'd even fought in a couple of arenas, but nothing like this. In the huge Colosseum with thousands of cheering ghosts, and the god Bacchus staring down at him, and 2 12-foot giants looming over him. Percy felt as small and insignificant as a bug. He also felt very angry. So I'm sorry if I read a god's name wrong. I am no Greek mythology expert. So I will try to do the best I can. So for now, I'm pronouncing it Bacchus. Probably wrong. So that's the Roman god. Bacchus, but in Greek it is Dionysus, Mr. D. I'm sorry, this is the only explanation I will have. I'm just warning you. I pronounce a lot of things wrong. Fighting giants was one thing. Bacchus making it into a game was something else. Percy remembered when Luke Castellan had told him years ago, when Percy had come back from his very first quest. Didn't you realize how useless it all is? All the heroics being the pawns of Olympus. I'm sorry, being pawns of the Olympians. Percy was almost the same age now as Luke had been then. He could understand how Luke became so spiteful. In the past 5 years, Percy had been the pawn too many times. The Olympians seemed to take turns using him for their schemes. Maybe the gods were better than the Titans or the giants or Gaia, but that didn't make them good or wise. It didn't make Percy like this stupid arena battle. Unfortunately, he didn't have much of a choice. If he was going to save his friends, he had to beat these giants. He had to survive and find Annabeth. Ephialtes and Otis made his decision easier by attacking. Together, the giants picked up a fake mountain as big as Percy's New York apartment and hurled it at the demigods. Percy and Jason bolted. They dove together into the nearest trench in the mountain and shattered above them, spraying them with plaster shrapnel. It wasn't deadly, but it stung like crazy. The crowd jeered and shouted for blood. Fight! Fight! I'll take Otis again, Jason called over the noise. Or do you want him this time? Percy tried to think. Dividing was a natural course, fighting the giants one-on-one, but it hadn't worked so well last time. It dawned on him that they needed a different strategy. This whole trip, Percy felt responsible for leading and protecting his friends. He was sure Jason felt the same way. They'd worked in small groups, hoping that it would be safer. That would be safer. They'd fought as individuals, each demigod doing what he or she did best. But Hera had made them a team of the 7 for a reason. The few times Percy and Jason had worked together, summoning the storm at Fort Sumter, helping the Argo II escape the Pillars of Hercules, even filling the Nymphaeum, Percy had felt more confident, better able to figure out problems, as if he'd been a Cyclops his whole life and suddenly woke up with 2 eyes. "We attack together," he said. "Otis first because he's weaker. Take him out quickly and move on to Ephialtes. Bronze and gold together. Maybe that'll keep them from reforming for a little longer." Jason smiled dryly, like he just found out he would die in an embarrassing way. "Why not?" he agreed. "But Ephialtes isn't going to stand there and wait while we kill his brother. Unless... Good wind today," Percy offered, "and there's some water pipes running under the arena." Jason understood immediately. He laughed, and Percy felt a spark of friendship. This guy thought the same way he did about a lot of things. "On 3, Jason said. "Why wait?" They charged out of the trench. As Percy suspected, the twins had lifted another plaster mountain and were waiting for a clear shot. The giants raised it above their heads, preparing to throw, and Percy caused a water pipe to burst at their feet, shaking the floor. Jason sent a blast of wind against Ephialtes' chest. The purple-haired giant toppled backward, and Otis lost his grip on the mountain, which promptly collapsed on top of his brother. Only Ephialtes' snake feet stuck out, darting their heads around as if wondering where the rest of their body had gone. So if this cuts off, I'm very sorry. I will do part 1 and part 2 sometime. I'm recording on a Chromebook, which if it goes for too long will cut off, so don't mind that. Like if I don't have an outro, don't mind. The crowd roared with approval, but Percy suspected only Ephialtes was only stunned. They had a few seconds at best. "Hey, Otis," he shouted. "The nutcracker bites." "Ah!" Otis snatched up his spear and threw it, but he was too angry to aim straight. Jason deflected it over Percy's head and into a lake. Demigods backed toward the water, shouting insults about ballet, which was kind of a challenge, as Percy didn't know much about it. Otis barreled toward them empty-handed before apparently realizing that he was empty-handed, and B, charging toward a large body of water to fight the son of Poseidon was maybe not a too good idea. Too late. He tried to stop, and the demigods rolled to either side, and Jason summoned wind, using the giant's own momentum to shove him into the water. As Otis struggled to rise, Percy and Jason attacked as one. They launched themselves at the giant and brought their blades down on Otis's head. The poor guy didn't have a chance to pirouette. He exploded into powder on the lake's surface like a huge packet of drink mix. Percy turned the lake into a whirlpool. Otis's essence tried to reform, but as his head appeared from the water, Jason called lightning and blasted him to dust. So far, so good, but they couldn't keep Otis down forever. Percy was already tired from his fight underground. His gut still ached from getting smacked with a spear shaft. He could feel his strength waning, and they still had another giant to deal with. As if on cue, the plaster mountain exploded behind them. Ephialtes rose, bellowing with anger. Percy and Jason waited as he lumbered toward them with his spear in hand. Apparently getting flattened under a plaster mountain had only energized him. His eyes danced with murderous light. The afternoon sun glinted on his coin-braided hair. Even his snake feet looked angry, baring their fangs and hissing. Jason called down another lightning strike, but Ephialtes caught on his spear and deflected the blast, melting a life-size plastic cow. He slammed the stone column out of his way like a stack of building blocks. Percy tried to keep the lake churning. He didn't want Otis rising to join the fight, but as the Falties closed the last few feet, Percy had to switch focus. Jason and he met the giant's charge, and they lunged around the Falties, stabbing and slashing in a blur of gold and bronze. But the giant parried every strike. "I will not yield!" Falties roared. "You may have ruined my spectacle, but Gaia will still destroy your world." Percy lashed out, slicing the giant's spear in half. Falties wasn't even phased. The giant slept low with a blunt end and knocked Percy off his feet. Percy landed hard on his sword arm, and Riptide clattered out of his grip. Jason tried to take advantage. He stepped inside the giant's guard and stabbed at his chest, but somehow Falties parried the strike. Parred the strike. He sliced the tip of his spear down Jason's chest, ripping his purple shirt into a vest. Jason stumbled, looking at a thin line of blood down his sternum. The Falties kicked him backwards. Up in the Emperor's box, Piper cried out, but her voice was drowned in the roar of the crowd. Bach just looked on with an amused smile, munching on a bag of Doritos. The Falties towered over Percy and Jason. Both halves of his spear broke, poised over their heads. Percy's sword arm was numb. Jason's gladius had skittered across the arena floor. Their plan had failed. Percy glanced up at Bacchus, deciding what final curse he would hurl at the useless wine god, when he saw a shape in the sky above the Colosseum, a large dark oval descending rapidly. From the lake, Otis yelled, trying to warn his brother, but his half-dissolved face could only manage, "Oh, don't worry, brother." False said, his eyes still fixed on the demigods. "I will make them suffer." The Argo II turned in the sky, presenting its port side, and green fire blazed from the ballista. "Actually," Percy said, "look behind you." He and Jason rolled away as Falties turned and bellowed in disbelief. Percy dropped into a trench just as the explosion rocked the Colosseum. When he climbed out again, the Argo II was coming in for a landing. Jason poked his head out from behind his improvised bomb shelter of a plastic horse. Falties lay charred and groaning on the arena floor. The sand around him seared into a halo of grass by the heat of the Greek fire. Otis was floundering in the lake, trying to reform, but from the arms down, he looked like a puddle of burnt oatmeal. Percy staggered over to Jason and clapped him on the shoulder. The ghostly crowd gave them a standing ovation as the Argo II extended its landing gear and settled on the arena floor. Leo stood at the helm. Hazel and Frank grinning at his side. Coach Hedge danced around the firing platform, pumping his fists in the air and yelling, "That's what I'm talking about!" Sorry, every time you hear that weird noise, it's because I'm getting a drink of water or something. Percy turned to the Emperor's box. "Well," he yelled at Bacchus, "was that entertaining enough for you, you wine-breathed little—" "No need for that." Suddenly the god was standing right next to him in the arena. He brushed Dorito dust off of his purple robes. "I have decided you are worthy partners for this combat." "Partners?" Jason growled. "You did nothing." Bacchus walked towards the edge of the lake. The water instantly drained, leaving an Otis-headed pile of mush. Bacchus picked his way to the bottom and looked up at the crowd. He raised his thyrsus. The crowd cheered and hollered and pointed their thumbs down. Percy had never been sure whether they meant live or die. He heard it both ways. Bacchus chose the more entertaining option. He smacked Otis's head with his pinecone staff, and a giant pile of Otis meal disintegrated completely. The crowd went wild. Bacchus climbed out of the lake lake and strutted over to Ephialtes, who was still laying spread eagle, overcooked and smoking. Again, Bacchus raised his thyrsus. "Do it!" the crowd roared. "Don't do it!" Ephialtes wailed. Bacchus tapped the giant on the nose, and Ephialtes crumbled to ashes. The ghosts cheered and threw spectral confetti as Bacchus strode around the stadium with his arms raised triumphantly, exultating in worship. He grinned at the demigods. "That, my friends, is a show. And of course I did something. I killed 2 giants." As Percy's friends disembarked from the ship, the crowd of ghosts shimmered and disappeared. Piper and Nico struggled down from the Emperor's box as the Colosseum's magical renovations began to turn to mist. The arena floor remained solid, but otherwise the stadium looked as if it hadn't hosted a good giant killing for eons. This chapter still has like 5 more pages. "Well," Bacchus said, "that was fun. You have my permission to continue your voyage." "Your permission?" Percy snarled. Yes, Bacchus raised an eyebrow. "Although your voyage may be a little harder than you expect, son of Neptune." "Poseidon," Percy corrected him automatically. "What do you mean about my voyage?" "You might try the parking lot behind the Emmanuel building," Bacchus said. "Best place to break through. Now, goodbye, my friend, and good luck with that other little matter." The god vaporized in a cloud of mist that smelled faintly of grape juice. Jason ran to meet Piper and Nico. Coach Hedge trotted up to Percy with Hazel, Frank, and Leo close behind. "Was that Dionysus?" Hedge asked. "I love that guy." "You're alive," Percy said to the others. "The giants said you were captured. What happened?" Leo shrugged. "Oh, just another brilliant plan by Leo Valdez. You'd be amazed by what you could do with an Archimedes sphere. A girl who can sense stuff underground and a weasel." "I was the weasel," Frank said glumly. "Basically," Leo explained, "activated a hydraulic screw with an Archimedes device, which is going to be awesome once I install it on the ship, by the way." Hazel sensed the easiest path to drill to the surface. "We made a tunnel big enough for a weasel, and Frank climbed up with a simple transmitter that I slapped together. After that, it was just a matter of hacking into Coach Hedge's favorite satellite channels and telling him to bring the ship around to rescue us. After he got us, finding you was easy, thanks to the godly light show at the Colosseum." Percy understood about 10% of Leo's story, but he decided it was enough since he had a more pressing question. "Where's Annabeth?" Leo winced. "Yeah, about that. She's still in trouble, we think. Her broken leg, maybe, at least according to the vision Gaia showed us. Rescuing her is our next stop." 2 seconds before, Percy had been ready to collapse. Now another surge of adrenaline coursed through his body. He wanted to strangle Leo and demanded why the Argo 2 hadn't sailed off to rescue Annabeth first, but he thought that might sound a little ungrateful. "Tell me about the vision," he said. "Tell me everything." The floor shook. The wooden planks began to disappear, spilling sand into pits of hypogeum below. "Let's talk on board," Hazel suggested. We'd better take off while we still can." One moment, please. Sorry, I keep pausing. I know it's very annoying. My throat's just been a little iffy, so I need to drink water. I'm going to talk so much. They sailed out of the Colosseum and veered south over the rooftops of Rome. All around the Piazza del Colosso, Traffic had come to a standstill. A crowd of mortals had gathered, probably wondering about the strange lights and sounds they had heard come from the ruins. As far as Percy could see, none of the giant's spectacular plans for destruction had come off successfully. The city looked the same as before. No one seemed to notice the huge Greek tremor rising into the sky. The demigods gathered around the helm. Jason bandaged Piper's sprained shoulder, while Hazel sat at the stern feeding Nico ambrosia. The son of Hades could barely lift his head. His voice was so quiet, Hazel had to lean in whenever he spoke. Frank and Leo recounted what had happened in the room with the Archimedes sphere and the visions Gaia had shown them in the bronze mirror. They quickly decided that their best lead to finding Annabeth was this cryptic device Bakchis had provided. The immunal building. Whatever that was. Frank started typing at the helm's computer while Leo tapped furiously at his controls, muttering, immunal building. Coach Hedge tried to help by wrestling an upside-down street map of Rome. Percy knelt next to Jason and Piper. How's the shoulder? Piper smiled. It'll heal. Both of you did great. Jason elbowed Percy. Not a bad team, you and me. Better than jousting in a Kansas cornfield, Percy agreed. There it is, Leo cried, pointing to his monitor. Frank, you're amazing. I'm setting course. Frank hunched his shoulders. I just read the name off the screen. Sometimes Chinese tourists marked it on Google Maps. Some Chinese tourists marked it on Google Maps. Leo grinned at the others. He reads Chinese. Just a little bit, Frank said. How cool is that? Guys, Hazel broke in. I hate to interrupt your admiration session, but you should hear this. She helped Nico to his feet. He'd always been pale, but now his skin looked like powdered milk. His dark, sunken eyes reminded Percy of photos he'd seen of liberated prisoners of war, which Percy guessed Nico basically was. Thank you. Thank you, Nico rasped. His eyes darted nervously around the group. I'd given up hope. The past week or so, Percy had imagined a lot of scathing things he might say to Nico when they met again, but the guy looked so frail and sad, Percy couldn't muster much anger. You knew about the two camps all along, Percy said. You could have told me who I was the first day I arrived at Camp Jupiter, but you didn't. Nico slumped against the helm. Percy, I'm sorry. I discovered Camp Jupiter last year. My dad let me go there, though I wasn't sure why. He told me the gods had kept the camp separate for centuries, that I couldn't tell anyone when the time wasn't right, but he said it would be important for me to know. He doubled over in a fit of coughing. Hazel held his shoulders until he could stand again. I thought Dad meant because of Hazel, Nico continued. I need a safe place to take her, but now I think he wanted me to know about both camps so I'd understand how important your quest was, and so I searched for the doors of death. The air turned electric, literally, as Jason started throwing off sparks. Did you find the doors? Percy asked. Nico nodded. I was a fool. I thought I could go anywhere in the underworld, but I walked right into Gaia's trap. I might as well have tried running from a black hole. Frank chewed his lips. What kind of black hole are you talking about? Nico started to speak, but whatever he needed to say must have been too terrifying. He turned to Hazel. She put her hand on her brother's arm. Nico told me about the doors of death have two sides, one in the mortal world, one in the underworld. The mortal side of the portal is in Greece. It's heavily guarded by Gaia's forces. That's where they brought Nico back into the upper world. Then they transported him to Rome. Piper must have been nervous because her cornucopia spit out a cheeseburger. Where exactly in Greece is this doorway? Almost done. Nico took a rattling breath. The House of Hades. It's an underground temple in Epirus. I can mark it on the map, but the mortal side of the portal isn't the problem. It's in the underworld. The doors of death are in. A cold pair of hands did the itsy bitsy spider down Percy's back. A black hole. An inescapable part of the underworld where even Nico D'Angelo couldn't go. Why hadn't Percy thought of this before? He'd been to the very edge of that place. He still had nightmares about it. Tartarus, he guessed. The deepest part of the underworld. Nico nodded. They pulled me into it. The pit, Percy. The things I saw down there. His voice broke. Hazel pursed her lips. No mortal has ever been to Tartarus, she explained. At least no one has ever gone and returned alive. It's the maximum security prison of Hades, where the old titans and other enemies of the gods are bound. It's where all the monsters go when they die on the earth. No one knows exactly what it's like. Her eyes drifted to her brother. The rest of her thought didn't need to be spoken. No one except Nico. Hazel handed him his black sword. Nico leaned on it like an old man's cane. Now I understand why Hades hasn't been able to close the doors, he said. Even the gods don't go into Tartarus. Even the god of death himself, the Thanos, wouldn't go near that place. Leo glanced over the wheel. So let me guess. We have to go there. Nico shook his head. It's impossible. I'm the son of Hades, and even I barely survived it. Gaia's forces overwhelmed me instantly. They're so powerful down there. No demigod would stand a chance. I almost went insane. Nico's eyes looked like shattered glass. Percy wondered sadly if something inside him had broken permanently. Then we'll sail for Epirus. Percy said, we'll just close the gates on the outside. On this side. I wish it were that easy, Nico said. The doors would have to be controlled on both sides to be closed. It's like a double seal. Maybe, just maybe, all 7 of you working together could defeat Gaia's monsters forces on the mortal side at the House of Hades. But unless you had a team fighting simultaneously on the Tartarus side, a team powerful enough to defeat a legion of monsters in their home territory. There has to be a way, Jason said. Nobody volunteered any brilliant ideas. Percy thought his stomach was sinking, but he realized the entire ship was descending toward a big building like a palace. Annabeth. Nico's news was so horrible, Percy had momentarily forgotten she was still in danger, which made him feel incredibly guilty. We'll figure out the Tartarus problem later, he said. Is that the Emmanuel building? Leo nodded. Bach just said something about the parking lot in the back. Well, there it is. What now? Percy remembered his dream of the dark chamber. The evil buzzing voice of the monster called her ladyship. He remembered how shaken Annabeth had looked when she'd come back from Fort Sumter after her encounter with the spiders. Percy had begun to suspect what might be down in that shrine. Literally, the monsters of all spiders. If he was right, and Annabeth had been trapped down there alone with that creature for hours, her leg broken, at this point, he didn't care if her quest was supposed to be solo or not. We have to get her out, he said. Well, yeah, Leo agreed, but he looked like he wanted to say, what if we're too late? Wisely, he changed tack. There's a parking lot in the way. There's a parking lot in the way. Percy looked at Coach Hedge. Bach just said something about breaking through. Coach, you saw ammo from those ballistae? The satyr grinned like a wild goat. I thought you'd never ask. And that is the end of the chapter. I will see you guys for the next chapter. It is Annabeth. So I will see you guys later. Bye, book nerds.